The rhythmic beeping of hospital monitors echoed through the sterile corridor of Walter Reed Medical Center. Inside room 247, Master Sergeant Michael Bennett lay motionless, his once sturdy frame now fragile beneath white sheets. The explosion 3 weeks ago in Afghanistan had left him clinging to life, with doctors working tirelessly to keep death at bay. Through cracked lips, he whispered a name that had haunted his dreams since that fateful day. Max. Sarah Bennett, his 19-year-old daughter, squeezed her father's hand as tears rolled down her cheeks. She knew that name well. Max, the Belgian Malinois who had been more than just a military working dog to her father. For 6 years they had been inseparable, until that tragic mission that tore them apart. "Please," Michael's voice trembled, "I need to see him. One last time." What he didn't know was that Max, too, was fighting his own battle for survival 7,000 miles away. Born in a small town in Massachusetts, Michael Bennett came from a long line of military service members. His grandfather served in World War II, his father in Vietnam, and now he carried forward that legacy of duty and honor. Growing up in the quiet suburb of Winchester, young Michael spent countless hours listening to his father's war stories on their weathered front porch, dreaming of the day he'd wear the uniform. At 18, fresh out of Winchester High School in 1995, Michael enlisted in the Army against his mother's wishes. Ellen Bennett, a local school teacher, had hoped her only son would pursue college instead. But the military blood ran too deep in Michael's veins. His father, retired Colonel James Bennett, merely nodded with pride when Michael announced his decision at Sunday dinner. Basic training at Fort Benning revealed Michael's natural leadership abilities. He excelled in every challenge, particularly in situations requiring quick thinking and team coordination. His drill sergeants noted his exceptional ability to remain calm under pressure, a trait that would serve him well in the years to come. During his first deployment to Iraq in 2005, Michael distinguished himself by leading a successful rescue mission that saved 3 fellow soldiers trapped behind enemy lines. The mission earned him a Silver Star and his first promotion. But it also taught him the true cost of war when his best friend, Tommy Sullivan, didn't make it home. Marriage came briefly in 2006 to his high school sweetheart, Rebecca Collins. Their daughter Sarah was born the following year, bringing light to Michael's life between deployments. However, the demands of military life and the shadows of PTSD from his Iraq tour slowly eroded their relationship. By 2010, Rebecca had filed for divorce, leaving Michael to balance his military duties with weekend visits to Sarah. Despite the personal setbacks, Michael's military career flourished. He completed Special Forces training in 2011, ranking top of his class. His commanding officers saw in him a rare combination of physical prowess and emotional intelligence. When the opportunity arose to join the K-9 unit in 2012, Michael found his true calling. The decision to join the K-9 unit was partly influenced by his childhood memories of Duke, the German shepherd that had been his faithful companion through his teenage years. Duke had helped him cope with his parents' frequent arguments and his mother's eventual departure when he was 15. The dog's unwavering loyalty had taught young Michael about unconditional love and trust. Through 3 more deployments, 2 to Afghanistan and 1 to Iraq, Michael built a reputation as a skilled tactician and compassionate leader. His fellow soldiers spoke of his ability to maintain morale even in the darkest moments, often through his subtle humor and unwavering dedication to his team. In early 2014, just before meeting Max, Michael received the news that his father had passed away from a heart attack. The loss hit him hard, but he channeled his grief into his work, determined to honor his father's memory through continued service. Sarah, then 12, became his anchor to civilian life, their weekend visits filled with hiking, baseball games, and long conversations about life. Little did Michael know that his greatest challenge and most profound relationship would begin when a certain Belgian Malinois entered his life, changing everything he thought he knew about partnership, loyalty, and sacrifice. The bond they would forge would be tested in ways neither man nor dog could have anticipated, leading to a series of events that would challenge not only their partnership but also their very survival. The first time Michael met Max at the Military Work and Dog Training Center at Lackland Air Force Base, the Belgian Malinois was considered challenging by most handlers. Standing in the training yard under the hot Texas sun in March 2014, Michael watched as Max paced his kennel, eyes alert and muscles tense. Unlike other dogs that barked or wagged their tails at potential handlers, Max observed everything with an unnerving intensity. "He's got washout written all over him," warned Master Sergeant Thompson, the head trainer. "Too intense, too aggressive. Already sent 3 handlers to medical, but where others saw a problem, Michael recognized something familiar, the same hypervigilance he'd developed after his tours in Iraq. He saw not aggression, but hyper-awareness, not defiance, but intelligence." Their first training session was a disaster by conventional standards. Max refused to follow basic commands, challenging Michael's authority at every turn. But instead of asserting dominance through force, Michael simply sat down in the middle of the training yard and waited. For 2 hours, neither moved. Finally, Max approached, sniffed Michael's outstretched hand, and lay down beside him. The breakthrough came during their 3rd week of training. During a detection exercise, Max suddenly veered off course, pulling Michael toward a supposedly clean training vehicle. Despite handlers' protests, Michael trusted Max's instinct. They discovered an unofficially planted training explosive meant for the next day's exercise. Max had detected it through sealed containers, demonstrating exceptional ability beyond standard training parameters. Their bond strengthened through 16-hour training days, countless repetitions of search patterns, and silent nights spent in the kennel when Max refused to settle without Michael nearby. They learned each other's rhythms, Max's slight ear twitch before detecting something suspicious, Michael's subtle shoulder tension when sensing danger. They became extensions of each other, moving as one unit through complex training scenarios. By month 3, they had broken multiple training records. Max's allegedly problematic intensity became his greatest asset under Michael's guidance. They pioneered new search techniques, with Max learning to indicate discoveries through subtle signals rather than traditional aggressive alerts, making them invaluable for covert operations. During their certification exercises, the pair faced their first real test. A freak thunderstorm hit during their final evaluation, creating chaos in the training facility. Several dogs became distressed, but Max remained focused, completing their assignment with perfect precision despite the environmental challenges. Their evaluators noted it was the finest performance they'd seen in decades. The nights were often the most transformative. Michael would stay late, talking to Max about everything: his fears about being a part-time father to Sarah, his struggles with PTSD, his hopes for their future missions. Max would listen, those intelligent eyes fixed on Michael, occasionally pressing his head against Michael's chest during particularly difficult confessions. Their graduation ceremony was intimate but significant. Sarah attended, watching with pride as her father and Max demonstrated their skills. It was the first time she saw her father truly at peace since her parents' divorce. Max, typically aloof with strangers, gently accepted Sarah's petting, seeming to understand her importance to Michael. Before their first deployment together, Michael took Max home for a week of leave. They spent days hiking the Massachusetts trails, strengthening their bond away from the structured military environment. At night, Max would lay by Michael's bed, a silent guardian against the nightmares that had plagued him for years. For the first time since his return from Iraq, Michael slept through the night. Sarah Bennett's earliest memories of her father were fragmented like a broken mirror, glimpses of a man in uniform, tearful airport goodbyes, and precious weekend visits that never seemed long enough. Born in 2007, she grew up understanding that sharing her father with the military was part of life, but that understanding didn't make the absences easier. Rebecca, her mother, tried to shield Sarah from the complexities of their broken marriage, but children sense more than adults realize. Sarah watched her mother's face tighten every time Michael's name was mentioned, noticed how the light in her father's eyes dimmed when he drove away Sunday evenings. The divorce in 2010, when Sarah was just 3, formalized what she already knew: her family was different from her friends. Weekends with her father became their sacred time. Michael would drive 3 hours each Friday to pick her up from their home in Massachusetts, regardless of exhaustion or weather. They developed their own rituals: Saturday morning pancakes shaped like animals, afternoon adventures in local parks, and long talks on the porch swing her grandfather had built. Michael never missed a weekend unless deployed, treating their time together with the same dedication he gave to his military duties. The hardest times were during deployments. Sarah would mark off days on her calendar, treasure the static-filled video calls, and sleep with the teddy bear dressed in army fatigues that her father had given her. At school, she became known for her detailed presentations about military working dogs, proud to share stories of her father's work even when her voice shook with worry for his safety. When Michael joined the K-9 unit, 12-year-old Sarah saw a change in her father. The haunted look that sometimes crossed his face began to fade. Their weekend conversations, once careful and measured, became more open. She learned to love Max through her father's stories long before meeting him, understanding that this dog had somehow helped heal parts of her father that even she couldn't reach. The first time Sarah met Max, she was initially jealous of the obvious bond between the dog and her father. But Max, with an intuition that seemed almost human, gently included her in their circle of trust. Soon their weekend adventures became three-way expeditions, with Max's presence somehow making their family feel more complete. As Sarah entered her teenage years, their relationship faced new challenges. She began questioning the military lifestyle that repeatedly took her father away, struggled with the weight of being a military kid, and sometimes resented Max for having more time with her father than she did. Yet even in their arguments, there was an underlying current of love and respect that never wavered. The summer before the incident, Sarah spent a month with her father and Max. At 17, she was old enough to understand the complexity of her father's choices and the depth of his commitment to both his country and his family. She watched him work with Max, saw the silent communication between them, and finally understood why her father couldn't imagine doing anything else with his life. Now, at 19 and studying veterinary science at Boston University, Sarah found herself at her father's hospital bedside, wondering if all their future weekends together would be lost. The thought of losing him, of never again seeing him and Max work together, of all the conversations left unspoken, was unbearable. Their relationship, built on precious moments stolen between deployments and duties, felt suddenly, devastatingly fragile. The 5th Special Forces K-9 unit was more than just a military division. It was a tight-knit family bound by trust, shared experiences, and the unique bond between handlers and their dogs. Captain James Richardson, the unit commander, ran operations with a blend of military precision and paternal care for his teams. A 30-year veteran with graying temples and steady hands, Richardson had personally selected Michael for the unit, recognizing in him the rare combination of discipline and empathy essential for K-9 handling. Staff Sergeant Emily Martinez served as the unit's senior trainer and veterinary specialist. Her expertise in canine psychology made her instrumental in developing training protocols, though her relationship with Michael and Max was sometimes strained by her traditional approach clashing with their unconventional methods. Despite their professional differences, she respected their results and often defended their partnership to skeptical superiors. Technical Sergeant David Cooper, known as Doc throughout the unit, was the team's medical specialist and Michael's closest friend within the ranks. A former civilian paramedic from Oregon, Cooper brought both medical expertise and a dry sense of humor to the unit. He was one of the few who understood the depth of the bond between Michael and Max, having treated both of them through various injuries and close calls. Lieutenant Thomas Wright, the unit's executive officer, represented the younger generation of leadership. Fresh from West Point and eager to prove himself, Wright often struggled to balance military protocol with the unique demands of K-9 operations. His by-the-book approach would later play a crucial role in the events that separated Michael and Max. Master Sergeant Robert Bobby Thompson, the head trainer who had initially doubted Max's potential, became one of their strongest advocates after witnessing their exceptional performance in the field. His gruff exterior masked a deep commitment to the welfare of both handlers and dogs under his command. The unit's support staff included Specialist Amanda Chen, whose administrative efficiency kept the complex machinery of K-9 operations running smoothly. Her quiet dedication and attention to detail would later prove invaluable in uncovering crucial evidence during the investigation. Among the other handler dog teams, Sergeant First Class Mark Williams and his German Shepherd Duke often worked alongside Michael and Max. Their contrasting styles, Duke's methodical approach versus Max's intuitive intensity, made them an effective complement on joint missions. The unit's base veterinarian, Dr. Catherine Sullivan, played a vital role in maintaining the health and performance of the working dogs. Her growing concerns about stress-related behaviors in military dogs would later intersect with Max's story in unexpected ways. Weekly training sessions brought together handlers, trainers, and support staff, fostering a sense of community that extended beyond military hierarchy. These sessions often ended with informal gatherings where stories were shared, bonds strengthened, and the unique challenges of their profession discussed openly. The unit's reputation for excellence attracted regular visits from military brass and congressional oversight committees. Colonel Patricia Hayes from the Pentagon's Working Dog Program took particular interest in Michael and Max's innovative techniques, though her support would be tested during the subsequent investigation. This intricate network of relationships, professional rivalries, and shared commitments formed the backdrop against which the drama of Michael and Max's story would unfold. Each person's actions, decisions, and loyalties would be tested in the aftermath of the incident that threatened to tear apart not just a handler and his dog, but the very fabric of the unit itself. Dawn broke over the Afghan mountains on April 15, 2024, casting long shadows across Forward Operating Base Echo. Michael Bennett and Max were preparing for what should have been a routine search operation of an abandoned compound suspected of housing explosive materials. The mission briefing from Captain Richardson was straightforward: sweep the area, identify any threats, and secure the perimeter for the follow-up team. The six-person team included Michael and Max, Sergeant Williams with Duke, Doc Cooper for medical support, and two junior handlers with their dogs. Lieutenant Wright insisted on accompanying them, citing the need for direct observation of field operations. The tension between Wright's rigid command style and the handler's more fluid approach was palpable during the pre-mission briefing. They moved out at 0600, the cool morning air carrying the scent of distant gunpowder and desert dust. Max was unusually alert, his behavior more intense than normal. Michael noticed but attributed it to the morning's heavy artillery exercises in the nearby valley. The first warning sign came when Max suddenly stopped at the compound's outer perimeter, refusing to advance despite commands. "Something's off," Michael radioed to the team. "Max never behaves like this without reason," but Lieutenant Wright, eager to maintain schedule, ordered them to proceed. Michael felt the first stirrings of unease as they entered the compound's main courtyard. The building was a maze of narrow corridors and small rooms. Max's behavior became increasingly erratic as they moved deeper inside. His usual methodical search pattern gave way to agitated movements, and he began emitting low growls, a behavior Michael had never seen in their 6 years together. In the third room, everything changed. Max suddenly lunged at Sergeant Williams, knocking him away from a doorway he was about to enter. The action was so unexpected that Williams fell hard, his head hitting the concrete floor. Before anyone could react, Max began aggressively herding the entire team toward the exit, snapping at anyone who tried to move in a different direction. "Control your dog," Bennett Wright shouted, reaching for his sidearm. But Michael saw something in Max's behavior that others missed. This wasn't aggression, it was desperation. The dog was trying to save them from something only he could detect. The situation escalated when Max physically prevented Doc Cooper from helping Williams. In the chaos that followed, 3 more team members were injured as Max forcefully drove them toward the exit. Michael tried to regain control, but for the first time in their partnership, Max refused to respond to any commands. The breaking point came when Lieutenant Wright, believing Max had gone rogue, aimed his weapon at the dog. Michael instinctively placed himself between them. In that split second of hesitation, an explosion rocked the compound's far side, exactly where Williams had been about to enter. The blast knocked everyone off their feet. Michael's last conscious memory was of Max standing over him protectively as secondary explosions began chain reacting through the building. When he awoke in the medical evacuation helicopter, Max was gone, and his world had changed forever. The official report listed 4 injured personnel, including Michael with severe blast trauma. But it was the psychological impact that cut deepest. The trust between handler and dog, the foundation of their entire unit, had been publicly shattered. Max was immediately quarantined, declared a threat to personnel safety. In the days that followed, as Michael drifted in and out of consciousness at the field hospital, rumors spread about Max's violent breakdown. Few seemed to connect his bizarre behavior with the explosions that followed. Lieutenant Wright's preliminary report recommended immediate euthanasia, citing unprovoked aggression resulting in multiple casualties. Only Michael, through his haze of pain and medication, kept insisting that Max had tried to save them, but his words were dismissed as the desperate defense of a handler too emotionally attached to his dog. The incident sparked a fierce debate within the military community about the reliability of working dogs and the emotional bonds formed with their handlers. The aftermath of the incident sent shockwaves through the entire K-9 unit. Within hours of the team's return to base, Max was placed in a high-security kennel, isolated from other dogs and handlers. The once respected military working dog was now treated like a dangerous liability, with warning signs posted on his kennel and armed guards stationed nearby. Staff Sergeant Martinez conducted the initial behavioral assessment, her face grim as she observed Max's continued agitation. The dog that had once set training records now paced his kennel relentlessly, refusing food and showing signs of extreme stress. "I've never seen anything like it," she reported to Captain Richardson. "It's as if he's trying to tell us something, but we can't understand what." The unit quickly divided into factions. Lieutenant Wright led the charge against Max, presenting a detailed report highlighting every aggressive action during the incident. "We can't risk another incident," he argued in the emergency staff meeting. "This dog has become unpredictable and dangerous. The protocol is clear, he needs to be put down." Dr. Sullivan, the base veterinarian, fought for more time to evaluate Max's condition. "There's no physical explanation for this behavioral change," she insisted. "His last medical check was perfect, and dogs don't just snap without reason." But her professional opinion was drowned out by the growing chorus of concerns about unit safety and military liability. The injured team members, still recovering in the base hospital, provided conflicting accounts. Sergeant Williams, despite his concussion, defended Max something was wrong in that building. "Max knew it before any of us." But others described the dog's behavior as savage and uncontrolled, their statements colored by the trauma of the experience. Doc Cooper found himself torn between loyalty to his injured colleagues and his trust in Michael's judgment. "I've treated Max for 3 years," he argued in Max's defense. "This isn't the same dog we know. Something triggered this behavior." His medical expertise carried weight, but fear had already taken root in the unit. The base command faced intense pressure from higher-ups. Colonel Hayes flew in from the Pentagon, her presence underlining the seriousness of the situation. "This incident raises questions about our entire K-9 program," she stated during a closed-door meeting. "We need to show that we can maintain absolute control over our working dogs." Specialist Chin, reviewing the mission logs, noticed discrepancies in the timeline but was hesitant to speak up in the charged atmosphere. The official narrative was already solidifying. A trusted military dog had suddenly turned violent, endangering his team and compromising the mission. Master Sergeant Thompson, who had watched Max and Michael develop into his finest team, struggled with his role in the investigation. 6 years of perfect service, he reminded the review board. Not a single incident of aggression. We need to ask why now, why there? The other handler dog teams were affected too. Training sessions became tense, with handlers watching their dogs for any signs of similar behavior. The bond of trust between human and canine, the foundation of their entire program, seemed suddenly fragile. Even those who supported Michael's defense of Max struggled to explain the dog's actions. The evidence seemed damning: 4 injured personnel, multiple witnesses, and clear documentation of Max's aggressive behavior. The fact that the explosions occurred after Max's outburst was treated as coincidental rather than causal. Captain Richardson faced the hardest decision of his career. His duty to unit safety warred with his instinct to trust his most experienced handler. "Bennett's never been wrong about Max," he confided to Martinez. "But I can't ignore 4 casualties and multiple witnesses." The pressure to make an example of Max mounted with each passing day. The incident had drawn unwanted attention to the K-9 program, raising questions about handler control and dog reliability. Some suggested that the close bonds between handlers and their dogs had become a liability rather than an asset. The official investigation began 3 days after the incident, led by a team from the Military Working Dog Program headquarters. Major Gregory Harrison, a by-the-book investigator with little field experience with K-9 units, headed the inquiry. His approach focused heavily on protocol violations rather than understanding the unique dynamics of handler-dog relationships. The investigation's first phase centered on Max's training records. Every minor incident was scrutinized: a miscommand during training 6 months ago, a moment of hesitation during their last certification, even playful roughhousing with Michael that was deemed potentially aggressive behavior. Context was stripped away, leaving only cold data points that painted a misleading picture. Witness interviews were conducted while the trauma was still fresh. Lieutenant Wright's testimony carried particular weight. The dog was completely out of control. Bennett's emotional attachment compromised his judgment and nearly got us all killed. The statement became the foundation of the investigation's narrative, despite conflicting accounts from other team members. Dr. Sullivan's medical reports on Max were largely dismissed. Her observations about his unusual stress patterns and the absence of any medical explanation for his behavior were filed away as inconclusive. Instead, the investigation focused on theories about combat stress and aggressive tendencies in military working dogs. Staff Sergeant Martinez was pressured to amend her initial behavioral assessment. They wanted me to focus on the aggressive actions she later confided to Captain Richardson. They weren't interested in the preceding behavior patterns or Max's previous record. Her professional reputation was subtly threatened when she tried to present a more balanced analysis. The explosion itself received surprisingly little attention in the investigation. It was treated as a separate incident, despite Michael's insistence that Max had sensed the danger. Major Harrison's report concluded that the subsequent explosion, while unfortunate, has no bearing on the dog's prior aggressive actions. Doc Cooper's medical reports on the injured team members were used selectively. Descriptions of the injuries were highlighted, while his notes about the unusual circumstances and Max's protective behavior were buried in appendices. The investigation seemed determined to build a case against Max rather than understand the truth. Specialist Chin's attempt to point out inconsistencies in the mission logs was met with bureaucratic resistance. "This isn't about paperwork," she was told. "We have 4 injured personnel and multiple witnesses. The facts are clear." Her concerns about the timeline discrepancies were never included in the official report. The investigation team interviewed Sarah Bennett, attempting to find evidence of previous aggressive behavior during Max's off-duty time with the family. Her passionate defense of Max's gentle nature around children and civilians was noted but dismissed as emotionally biased testimony from a family member. Colonel Hayes, under pressure from Pentagon officials concerned about public relations, pushed for quick conclusions. The investigation needed to show that the military could handle such incidents decisively. The complex reality of the situation was sacrificed for the sake of institutional confidence. The preliminary report, released just 10 days after the incident, recommended immediate dismissal for Michael and euthanasia for Max. It cited gross negligence in handler control and dangerous instability in the animal as primary factors. The speed of the conclusion left no time for deeper analysis or alternative explanations. Captain Richardson was forced to sign off on the report despite his reservations. Sometimes the military's need for clear answers overshadows the messy reality of combat situations, he told his staff. The weight of command responsibility had never felt heavier. The false conclusions of the investigation would have far-reaching consequences. They not only threatened Max's life and Michael's career, but also began to erode the foundation of trust within the entire K9 program. Handlers became more hesitant, second-guessing their dogs' instincts. The very qualities that made military working dogs invaluable, their initiative, intuition, and bond with their handlers, were now viewed with suspicion. From his hospital bed at the base medical center, Michael Bennett launched what many considered a futile battle to save Max's life. Despite severe injuries and constant pain, he dictated detailed statements to Sarah, who had flown to Afghanistan on emergency family leave. His voice, though weakened by trauma, carried the unwavering conviction of a man fighting for more than just a military working dog. Max wasn't attacking the team, Michael insisted during his official statement. He was protecting us. Every action he took pushed us away from the explosion site. That's not aggression, that's exactly what we trained him to do. His medical team advised against the stress of these lengthy interviews, but Michael refused to rest while Max's fate hung in balance. The consequences of his stubborn defense came swiftly. Lieutenant Wright filed a formal complaint, citing Michael's emotional compromise as a threat to unit integrity. The complaint triggered an automatic review of all his past missions, searching for previous instances of questionable judgment. His stellar record was suddenly under scrutiny, every decision questioned through the lens of suspected emotional bias. Sarah watched her father's military career unravel with heartbreaking speed. The respect he'd earned through 20 years of service seemed to evaporate overnight. Former colleagues avoided eye contact in hospital corridors, and whispers followed them through the base. The daughter, who had grown up proud of her military father, now witnessed the cruel efficiency with which the system could turn against its own. Michael's physical recovery was complicated by the stress of fighting the investigation's conclusions. Doc Cooper, risking his own position, documented how the anxiety was affecting Michael's healing process. "This isn't just about saving a dog," Cooper noted in his medical reports. "This is about a soldier's right to trust his training and experience." The financial consequences hit hard. Michael's medical leave pay was reduced pending the investigation's outcome. The costs of legal representation and Sarah's extended stay in Afghanistan strained their resources. Rebecca, Michael's ex-wife, had to help with Sarah's college tuition payments, adding another layer of complexity to their already complicated family dynamics. Captain Richardson tried to moderate the situation, but his hands were increasingly tied by command pressure. "You're forcing me to choose between supporting you and protecting the unit," he told Michael during a private visit. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The implicit message was clear: accept the findings, allow Max to be euthanized, take an honorable discharge, and preserve what was left of his reputation. But Michael wouldn't give up. He requested access to Max, offering to demonstrate their bond and Max's responsiveness to commands. The request was denied, citing safety concerns. Each denial only strengthened his resolve, even as it weakened his position within the military hierarchy. The worst blow came when Michael learned that Max had been classified as irredeemably dangerous and scheduled for euthanasia. The date was set for the following month, deliberately timed to occur after Michael's expected transfer to a stateside medical facility. The military hoped physical separation would make him accept the inevitable. Through it all, Sarah stood by her father, witnessing firsthand the depth of the bond between handler and dog that she had previously only understood through stories. She saw how each setback seemed to physically pain him, how his determination to save Max gave him the strength to endure grueling physical therapy sessions. The consequences extended beyond the professional realm. Michael's unwavering defense of Max began to affect his relationships with other handlers. Some privately supported him but couldn't risk their own careers. Others, especially younger handlers, began to question the wisdom of forming close bonds with their dogs. As his discharge date approached, Michael faced a devastating choice: accept the official narrative and maintain some influence within the system, or continue fighting and risk losing everything: his career, his reputation, and ultimately Max's life. The decision would define not just his future, but potentially change how the military viewed the handler-dog relationship forever. The transfer to Walter Reed Medical Center in late May 2024 marked a turning point in Michael's battle. His physical condition, already compromised by the blast injuries, began deteriorating rapidly. The doctors were baffled by his sudden decline, though Doc Cooper, who had followed his case to Washington, suspected the emotional toll was as damaging as the physical trauma. In his hospital room, surrounded by medical equipment and stacks of mission reports, Michael worked tirelessly despite his weakening condition. Sarah had set up a makeshift investigation center, pinning timeline charts and witness statements to the walls. Every available surface was covered with documents, photos, and maps of the compound where everything had changed. "The timing doesn't make sense," Michael would insist during his more lucid moments, his finger tracing the mission timeline for the 100th time. "Max's behavior changed exactly 17 minutes before the explosion. He knew something we didn't." The effort of speaking often left him gasping, his lungs still damaged from the blast, but he refused to rest. Dr. Eleanor Matthews, his lead physician at Walter Reed, grew increasingly concerned. "Your body can't heal if you don't give it a chance," she warned, noting his elevated blood pressure and irregular sleep patterns. But Michael's response was always the same: "I'll rest when Max is safe." The determination in his eyes couldn't mask the tremor in his hands or the pallor of his skin. Sarah watched her father's decline with growing alarm. The strong, confident soldier who had always seemed invincible was now struggling with basic tasks. She found him one night slumped over his papers, burning with fever but still muttering about inconsistencies in the official report. That night she called her mother for the first time since the incident, her voice breaking as she described her father's condition. The investigation itself was taking its toll. Every lead seemed to hit a wall of military bureaucracy. Requests for additional evidence were denied or lost in administrative limbo. Key witnesses became mysteriously unavailable for follow-up interviews. Even Doc Cooper's attempts to access Max's medical records were blocked by new security protocols. Michael's physical therapy sessions became a battleground between his determination and his body's limitations. He pushed himself beyond recommended limits, attempting to regain strength for what he knew would be a long fight. Each session left him exhausted and in pain, but he refused to take stronger pain medication, needing to keep his mind clear for the investigation. The nightmares were perhaps the worst. Hospital staff would find him in the early hours, screaming Max's name, reliving the explosion. These episodes left him weaker each time, his body struggling to cope with the combination of physical and emotional trauma. Dr. Matthews eventually prescribed sleeping medication, but Michael often refused it, afraid of missing some crucial detail in his research. Sarah began noticing subtle changes in her father's cognitive function. Sometimes he would lose track of conversations mid-sentence or forget what he was looking for in the mission reports. The doctors called it a combination of trauma, exhaustion, and the aftereffects of his injuries, but to Sarah, it felt like watching her father slip away piece by piece. The breaking point came during a routine medical examination. Michael's heart showed signs of strain, and his lung function had decreased significantly. Dr. Matthews delivered the news directly without rest and reduced stress. His chances of recovery were diminishing rapidly. The choice was becoming stark: his health or his investigation. But even this dire warning couldn't deter Michael. From his hospital bed, he began reaching out to his old military contacts, calling in favors accumulated over 20 years of service. Each call drained his energy, but occasionally yielded small pieces of information: a contradictory statement, a missing photograph, a delayed report. Rebecca, seeing the toll on both Michael and Sarah, temporarily moved to Washington to help. Despite their divorce status, she couldn't stand by while her daughter watched her father self-destruct. Her presence added both support and complexity to the situation, as she struggled between wanting to help and fearing that Michael's obsession would destroy him. Through it all, Michael kept a photo of Max by his bedside, not the official military portrait, but a casual shot taken during their last leave together. In quiet moments when pain or exhaustion overwhelmed him, he would look at that photo and find renewed purpose. "He never gave up on me," he would tell Sarah. "I won't give up on him." Sarah Bennett stood at the window of her father's hospital room, watching the June rain blur the Washington skyline. Her father's labored breathing behind her seemed to echo her own internal struggle. For the first time in her life, she found herself questioning not just her father's judgment, but the very values he had instilled in her. "Dad, maybe they're right," she finally said one evening, her voice trembling. "Maybe Max did just." Snap, the words felt like betrayal in her mouth, but watching her father's relentless decline was becoming unbearable. His obsession with clearing Max's name was consuming him, turning the strong, vibrant man she knew into a shadow. The anger came in waves. Anger at the military for their rigid investigation, at Max for causing this situation, at her father for choosing this battle over his own health, and at herself for beginning to doubt. Her college studies had been put on hold, her carefully planned future derailed by this crisis. Some nights, alone in her temporary apartment, she would cry from sheer frustration and exhaustion. Rebecca's presence in Washington added another layer of complexity. Sarah found herself caught between her parents' differing approaches to the situation. Her mother's practical concerns about Michael's health and their dwindling finances clashed with her father's single-minded determination. "Your father's always been stubborn," Rebecca would say, "but this time it's going to kill him." The breaking point came when Sarah discovered her father had been hiding the severity of his symptoms to avoid additional medical restrictions. She exploded, years of pent-up fear and frustration pouring out. "You're choosing a dog over your own life," she screamed. "You're choosing Max over me." The words hung in the air like physical things, shocking them both with their raw honesty. Her father's response, weak but unwavering, only fueled her anger. "Sarah, if you saw what I saw that day, you'd understand. Max saved all of us, but she didn't want to understand anymore. She wanted her father to get better." She wanted their lives back to normal. She wanted to stop feeling like she was losing her father to a ghost of a dog she'd once loved. The doubt grew stronger as she reviewed the investigation files. The evidence seemed clear. Max had attacked team members, caused injuries, compromised the mission. Her veterinary studies made her question her father's interpretation of Max's behavior. Combat stress could affect dogs just as it affected soldiers. Perhaps Max had simply reached his breaking point. Sarah began avoiding the makeshift investigation center in her father's room, focusing instead on his medical care and physical therapy. She threw herself into researching treatments, consulting with doctors, anything to feel productive without engaging with the Max situation. But her father's constant questions about the investigation files forced her to confront the issue daily. The other handlers' families reached out, some offering support, others demanding she convince her father to drop the matter. Their children's messages on social media ranged from sympathy to accusation. The pressure to be both a supportive daughter and a voice of reason became overwhelming. Her anger found new targets as she watched her father struggle through physical therapy. She was angry at the military system that had demanded so much from him over the years, at the doctors who couldn't make him better, at Max for being the catalyst for all this pain. Even the happy photos of Max and her father that still decorated his room began to feel like accusations. During one particularly difficult night, when her father's fever spiked dangerously high, Sarah found herself in the hospital chapel. "I used to love Max," she whispered to the empty room. "Now I almost wish Dad had never met him." The admission felt like a weight lifted, followed immediately by crushing guilt. Rebecca found her there, and for the first time since the divorce, mother and daughter truly talked. "Your father's always fought for what he believes in," Rebecca said softly. "It's what made me fall in love with him, and it's what eventually drove us apart. But Sarah, it's also what made him such a good father and soldier." The conversation marked a subtle shift in Sarah's emotional struggle. Her anger didn't disappear, but it began to transform into something more complex. She started to understand that her father's fight for Max wasn't just about a dog, it was about everything he had ever believed in and fought for. The turning point came on a muggy July morning when Specialist Amanda Chen arrived at Walter Reed with a thick manila envelope. She had risked her career to smuggle out copies of the original mission logs and equipment readings from the compound. Something never felt right about the official report, she told Sarah, her voice barely above a whisper. "These records show why." Sarah spent the next 3 days analyzing the documents while her father slept, his condition having worsened after another round of surgeries. The logs revealed critical discrepancies. The official report claimed Max's aggressive behavior was random, but the timeline showed a clear pattern. Each aggressive action had pushed the team away from areas that later exploded. More compelling evidence came from Dr. Sullivan, who had quietly continued her investigation of Max's behavior. Her analysis, sent through unofficial channels, documented similar cases where military working dogs had detected threats that human sensors missed. "Max's behavior matches exactly with these documented cases of extraordinary threat detection," she wrote. Sergeant Williams, still recovering from his injuries, provided a sworn statement that directly contradicted Lieutenant Wright's version of events. "Max didn't attack me," his statement read. "He blocked me from entering that doorway. Seconds later, that entire section collapsed. I'm alive because of that dog." The most damning evidence came from the compound's structural analysis, buried deep in the technical appendices. Engineers had found traces of sophisticated explosive compounds in areas Max had specifically prevented the team from entering. These compounds were known to be undetectable by standard equipment, but had distinct odor signatures that trained dogs could identify. Sarah's hands trembled as she cross-referenced the timestamps. Max's first signs of agitation coincided exactly with their approach to the most heavily rigged areas. Each subsequent aggressive action had moved the team further from danger. The dog hadn't snapped, he'd been desperately trying to communicate a threat his human handlers couldn't perceive. Doc Cooper contributed crucial medical evidence. His detailed field notes, which had been omitted from the official report, showed that none of the team's injuries were consistent with dog attacks. The bruises and cuts had come from Max pushing people away from danger zones, not from aggressive biting or mauling. The evidence mounted as more people came forward. A junior handler revealed that his dog had shown similar agitation during a training exercise near the compound a week earlier, but he'd been too afraid to report it after seeing what happened to Max. 3 other K-9 units reported unusual behavior patterns in their dogs during missions in the same region. Sarah found herself staying up late into the night, piecing together the real story. Security camera footage from the compound's perimeter, though grainy, clearly showed Max's body language changing as they approached specific areas, the same areas that later proved to be rigged with explosives. His behavior wasn't erratic, it was purposeful. Photos from the post-explosion investigation, when properly sequenced, revealed that Max had essentially mapped out the explosive locations through his actions. Every area he had prevented the team from entering later showed evidence of sophisticated explosive devices. The dog had created a makeshift evacuation route, herding the team along the only safe path out of the compound. Lieutenant Wright's own body camera footage, which Sarah discovered had been partially redacted in the official report, captured crucial moments that supported Max's actions. The audio clearly picked up Max's warning growls, changing in pitch and intensity as they approached different threat levels, a pattern consistent with his training protocols. The most personal evidence came from Sarah's own research into her father's training logs with Max. 6 years of detailed notes showed Max had previously exhibited similar protective behavior during training scenarios involving hidden threats. Her father had documented and even praised these instances, noting Max's ability to sense dangers before they became apparent. As Sarah compiled the evidence, she began to see her father's unwavering faith in Max in a new light. This wasn't blind devotion or the desperate clinging to a beloved pet. This was a handler's deep understanding of his partner's capabilities, an understanding that had been dismissed as emotional attachment by those who didn't know better. The evidence painted a clear picture. Max hadn't failed his training or succumbed to combat stress. He had performed exactly as he was trained to do, at a level so sophisticated that it had been misinterpreted as malfunction. The dog had chosen to risk everything: his reputation, his life, his bond with his handler, to save his team. The story broke in the Washington Post on a Sunday morning. Military dog facing death sentence may have saved entire unit. Sarah's carefully compiled evidence, presented through veteran military correspondent Jack Morrison, transformed what had been a minor military controversy into a national conversation about loyalty, justice, and the extraordinary bonds between handlers and their K-9 partners. Social media exploded within hours. Save Max and Justice for Max began trending nationwide. Veterans groups, particularly those who had worked with military working dogs, mobilized with unprecedented speed. Their testimonials about similar experiences with their K-9 partners added credibility to Michael's claims about Max's behavior. The initial military response was defensive. Pentagon spokesperson Major Jennifer Hayes attempted to maintain the official line: "While we appreciate the public's concern, decisions about military working dogs are made based on strict protocols designed to ensure unit safety." This statement backfired spectacularly when a retired K-9 handler published a detailed rebuttal pointing out how Max's actions aligned perfectly with his training. Local news stations began camping outside Walter Reed, hoping to catch glimpses of Michael or Sarah. The image of the wounded soldier fighting to save his K-9 partner captured the public imagination. When photos of Max and Michael from their service days surfaced showing them in Afghanistan, Iraq, and training exercises, the emotional impact was undeniable. Celebrity activists took up the cause. A famous action movie star, himself a military veteran, offered to pay for Max's legal defense and rehabilitation. Animal rights organizations pledged support, though Sarah carefully distanced their case from more radical groups, maintaining focus on the military service aspect of Max's story. The story took an unexpected turn when families of other team members began speaking out. Sergeant Williams' wife gave an emotional interview. "That dog they want to put down? He saved my husband's life. Our children still have their father because of Max." Her testimony directly contradicted the official narrative of Max as a dangerous liability. Congressional representatives, sensing a popular cause, began making inquiries. Senator Diana Morrison, whose son had served with a K-9 unit in Iraq, called for a formal review of the case. "If we're willing to send these dogs into combat," she stated during a press conference, "we owe them the same careful justice we'd give any soldier accused of misconduct." The pressure forced the military to respond more substantively. A review board was convened, though initially behind closed doors. This sparked further controversy when veterans groups demanded transparency, arguing that Max's case had implications for the entire military working dog program. Sarah found herself thrust into the role of spokesperson for their cause. Her combination of personal involvement and veterinary knowledge made her an ideal advocate. Though initially uncomfortable with public speaking, she discovered her father's strength within herself. Her appearances on morning shows and news programs brought a scientific perspective to the emotional debate. Letters and emails poured in from around the country. Former military dog handlers shared stories of their canine partners' extraordinary abilities. Civilian dog trainers offered expert testimony about canine behavior patterns. Even children sent drawings of Max, often depicting him with a superhero cape. The public support had a visible effect on Michael's recovery. Though still seriously ill, he drew strength from knowing their fight was gaining momentum. His doctors noted improved vital signs as the possibility of saving Max became more real. "He's not just fighting for himself anymore," Dr. Matthews observed. "He's fighting for everyone who believes in him." Military families began organizing rallies outside bases across the country. Their message was clear: the bond between handlers and their dogs wasn't a liability, but a crucial element of their effectiveness. Photos of these rallies, showing children holding Save Max signs alongside their uniformed parents, became powerful symbols of the growing movement. The story's reach extended internationally. British, Canadian, and Australian military K9 units offered statements supporting the recognition of dogs' advanced threat detection abilities. Their experiences paralleled Max's case, providing crucial validation of Michael's interpretation of events. As public pressure mounted, cracks began appearing in the military's united front. Junior officers privately expressed support for reviewing the case. Some senior officials, recognizing the public relations disaster, began suggesting alternative approaches to Max's situation. The narrative was shifting from a simple case of canine aggression to a complex story about loyalty, understanding, and justice. The grassroots movement to save Max began in the unlikely setting of Walter Reed's physical therapy ward. Veterans undergoing rehabilitation, many with their own stories of canine partnerships, started sharing Michael's story during their sessions. This informal network quickly expanded beyond the hospital walls, reaching into the heart of the military community. Frank Miller, a retired Marine K9 handler who owned a local security company, became the first to offer concrete support. He established the Max Defense Fund with an initial donation of $50,000, providing resources for legal representation and expert testimonies. "When you've worked with these dogs," Miller said, "you know they don't just snap without reason. There's always a story behind their actions." The local community around Walter Reed transformed into a hub of support. Restaurant owners provided free meals for the Bennetts, hotel managers offered discounted rates for visiting supporters, and law firms volunteered their services. Every weekend, informal gatherings in the hospital's family area grew larger as more people joined the cause. Military spouses, led by Catherine Williams, Sergeant Williams' wife, organized a letter-writing campaign that flooded Pentagon offices with personal stories about military working dogs. Their efforts gained particular strength when they focused on documented cases where K9 units had saved lives through actions that initially appeared controversial. Vietnam veteran James O'Connor, whose K9 partner had saved his unit in 1969, organized a unique demonstration. He brought together 30 retired military dog handlers, each with a photo of their former K9 partner, to stand in silent vigil outside the Pentagon. The image of these aging veterans, many in wheelchairs but still proudly holding their dogs' photos, captured national attention. Support from unexpected quarters strengthened the movement. Dr. Patricia Reynolds, a renowned animal behaviorist, volunteered to review Max's complete service record. Her detailed analysis, backing up Michael's interpretation of Max's actions, added scientific credibility to their emotional appeal. "What we're seeing here," she stated, "is not aggression, but the highest form of trained response." The local K9 training community rallied around the cause. Professional trainers offered detailed explanations of dog behavior for media outlets, helping the public understand the sophistication of military working dogs' capabilities. They organized demonstrations showing how trained dogs respond to threats, effectively illustrating how Max's actions aligned with his training. Sarah's veterinary school classmates established a social media command center coordinating online efforts to maintain public interest. They created infographics explaining military dog training, shared success stories from K9 units worldwide, and organized virtual events allowing supporters to show solidarity from anywhere in the world. Churches and community centers around military bases became meeting points for supporters. Sunday gatherings often featured prayers for both Michael's recovery and Max's salvation. These meetings evolved into planning sessions for rallies and fundraisers, creating a nationwide network of advocacy groups. Local businesses near military installations began displaying Save Max posters in their windows. A Virginia-based T-shirt company produced Justice for Max merchandise, with all proceeds going to the Defense Fund. The shirts became a common sight around military communities, serving as visible symbols of support. Children of military families started their own campaign, sending handmade cards and drawings to Walter Reed. Their innocent perspectives on loyalty and friendship provided powerful testimony during public hearings. One 9-year-old's letter reading Max was just doing his job saving people became a rallying cry for the movement. The support extended beyond traditional military circles. Police K9 units nationwide began sharing their own stories of dogs whose unusual behavior had prevented disasters. Their testimonies helped bridge the gap between military and civilian understanding of working dog capabilities. Rebecca, despite her initial skepticism, became an unexpected ally. Her background in school administration helped organize the growing movement into effective action groups. She coordinated with military family support organizations, creating a structured approach to advocacy that the military couldn't easily dismiss. The community support had a profound effect on Michael's recovery. Physical therapists noted his increased determination during sessions when supporters gathered outside his window. The knowledge that he wasn't fighting alone seemed to give him renewed strength, even as his medical challenges continued. What began as a local effort to save one dog evolved into a national conversation about loyalty, justice, and the deep bonds formed in military service. The movement demonstrated how communities could unite across political and social divides when touched by a story of genuine loyalty and sacrifice. Under mounting public pressure, the Pentagon announced a formal reopening of Max's case in late July 2024. Colonel Robert Hawthorne, a respected veteran of the K9 program with 30 years of experience, was appointed to lead the new investigation. His first action requesting all original evidence, including previously redacted materials, signaled a significant shift from the initial rushed inquiry. The review team assembled by Colonel Hawthorne included an unprecedented mix of military and civilian experts. Dr. Patricia Reynolds joined as lead behavioral analyst, while retired Master Sergeant James Cooper, renowned for developing K9 training protocols, served as technical advisor. Their inclusion marked a departure from the military's traditionally closed investigation process. The new investigation began by re-examining the compound's structural analysis. Engineering experts, using advanced mapping techniques, created a detailed reconstruction of the explosion sites. Their findings revealed a pattern that perfectly matched Max's movements. Every area the dog had prevented the team from entering later proved to be rigged with explosives. Lieutenant Wright's testimony came under particular scrutiny. When confronted with the complete timeline and physical evidence, inconsistencies in his account began to emerge. His initial report had omitted crucial details about Max's behavior before the incident, including clear warning signals that aligned with standard K9 threat responses. Sergeant Williams, now recovered enough to testify in person, provided a compelling counter-narrative. Max didn't attack me, he stated firmly during his 3-hour testimony. He body-blocked me from entering a death trap. Every action he took was calculated to keep us alive, even if we didn't understand it at the time. His testimony carried extra weight given his initial injuries. The investigation team traveled to the K9 training facility where Max had received his initial training. Reviews of his early behavioral assessments revealed a dog with exceptional threat detection abilities. His training records showed numerous instances where he had detected dangers that even his instructors hadn't anticipated, using similar behavioral patterns to those displayed during the incident. Dr. Sullivan's previously dismissed veterinary reports received new attention. Her detailed documentation of Max's physical condition before and after the incident showed no signs of the aggressive tendencies or mental instability cited in the original investigation. Instead, his behavior patterns consistently indicated acute stress responses to perceived threats. The review of radio communications during the incident proved particularly revealing. Enhanced audio analysis detected Max's warning growls changing in specific patterns as the team approached different danger zones. These changes matched documented K9 threat response protocols, suggesting Max was following his training rather than acting erratically. Staff Sergeant Martinez's original behavioral assessments, which had been heavily edited in the first investigation, were restored to their complete form. Her unedited reports described Max's actions as consistent with extreme threat response rather than the unstable aggression cited in the modified versions. This discovery prompted a separate inquiry into who had altered the documents and why. The investigation expanded to include interviews with other K9 handlers who had operated in the same region. Multiple reports emerged of dogs showing similar agitation near compounds that later proved to be rigged with explosives. These accounts had been overlooked or dismissed in the initial investigation, but now formed a pattern supporting Max's actions. Colonel Hawthorne personally interviewed Michael at Walter Reed, spending hours reviewing the mission details. Despite his weakened condition, Michael provided crucial insights into Max's training and typical behavior patterns. His detailed knowledge of Max's threat response signals added vital context to the event timeline. The breakthrough came when the team discovered archived sensor data from the compound. Though the equipment had failed to detect the explosives, it had recorded subtle environmental changes that coincided with Max's behavioral shifts. This technical evidence provided scientific backing to what Michael had insisted all along: Max had detected a threat before any human or machine could. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that the original conclusions had been rushed and deeply flawed. The pressure to quickly resolve what seemed like a straightforward case of canine aggression had led to crucial evidence being overlooked or misinterpreted. More disturbing was the emergence of evidence suggesting some officials had actively suppressed information that didn't fit their preferred narrative. Colonel Hawthorne's preliminary findings, submitted to the Pentagon in early August, painted a radically different picture from the original investigation. Max's actions, far from being aggressive or unstable, appeared to be a textbook example of a military working dog performing exactly as trained, protecting his team at all costs, even when his methods appeared unconventional to those unaware of the danger. Sarah Bennett sat alone in her father's hospital room, staring at the wall of evidence she had once dismissed as her father's desperate delusions. The weight of her earlier doubt pressed heavily on her conscience as Colonel Hawthorne's preliminary findings validated everything her father had tried to tell her. The realization that she had almost given up on Max and, by extension, her father, brought tears to her eyes. The transformation in Sarah's perspective began during her review of the unedited training videos. Watching Max work with her father in those early days, she recognized patterns she'd studied in her veterinary courses. Every movement, every signal between handler and dog spoke of a deep, professional understanding that went far beyond emotional attachment. She had been wrong to dismiss their bond as mere sentiment. Her father noticed the change in her first. Despite his weakened condition, he saw how she now lingered over Max's service photos, how she spoke about him in the present tense again. "You believe us now," he said one evening, not a question but a gentle acknowledgement. Sarah could only nod, her throat tight with emotion. Taking action to make amends, Sarah threw herself into supporting the new investigation. Her veterinary training proved invaluable as she worked with Dr. Reynolds, analyzing Max's behavior patterns. Together, they compiled a comprehensive report showing how Max's actions during the incident aligned perfectly with his training for extreme threat scenarios. The turning point in Sarah's advocacy came during a crucial meeting with military officials. Standing before the review board, she combined her personal testimony with professional insight. "I was wrong about Max," she declared, her voice steady. "As a veterinary student and as the daughter of a K9 handler, I can now say with certainty that Max's actions were those of a highly trained military working dog performing his duty under extraordinary circumstances." Her change of heart affected others. Other handlers' family members who had been skeptical began reconsidering their positions. Sarah started a support group for military families dealing with similar situations, creating a space where doubts and fears could be openly discussed and addressed with both emotional understanding and professional insight. Working closely with her mother, Sarah organized a series of educational workshops about military working dogs. Rebecca's administrative skills and Sarah's growing expertise created programs that helped bridge the gap between military protocol and canine behavior science. Their efforts helped other families understand the sophisticated capabilities of dogs like Max. The long hours at her father's bedside took on new meaning. Instead of trying to convince him to give up the fight, Sarah now helped strengthen his case. She read him new evidence as it emerged, celebrated small victories in the investigation, and shared stories from the growing support movement. Her father's health seemed to improve with each positive development. Sarah's veterinary studies gained new focus. She began specializing in military and service dog behavior, determined to prevent future misunderstandings like the one that had nearly cost Max his life. Her professors noted the change, supporting her efforts to combine academic research with real-world advocacy. The guilt over her initial doubts transformed into determination. Sarah started documenting everything: her father's recollections, the investigation's findings, the community's response. "This isn't just about saving Max anymore," she told her mother. "This is about making sure no other handler and dog have to go through what Dad and Max did." Her advocacy extended to social media, where she shared informed, measured posts about military working dogs' capabilities. Her combination of personal experience and professional knowledge made her a respected voice in the ongoing public discourse about Max's case. Late one night, alone with her father after a particularly encouraging day in the investigation, Sarah finally voiced her deepest regret. "I'm sorry I didn't believe in Max from the beginning," she whispered. Her father's response was characteristic of his understanding nature. "You believe now. That's what matters." The experience changed Sarah's relationship with her father in unexpected ways. As she fought alongside him to save Max, she gained a deeper understanding of the principles that had guided his military career. The loyalty, dedication, and unwavering faith in his partner that she had once seen as stubborn obsession, she now recognized as the highest form of integrity. Her father's strength, even in his weakened state, inspired her daily. "Max never gave up on us," he would remind her during difficult moments. "We won't give up on him." Sarah had come to understand that this wasn't just about saving a dog, it was about honoring a sacred trust between partners, about standing up for what's right even when it seemed impossible. The legal battle for Max's life entered its critical phase in mid-August 2024. A specialized military tribunal was convened to review Colonel Hawthorne's findings and determine Max's fate. The proceedings, usually closed to the public, were opened under unprecedented media scrutiny, reflecting the case's national significance. Attorney Claire Davidson, a former JAG officer specializing in military working dog cases, led Max's defense team. Her opening statement struck at the heart of the matter. "This isn't just about one dog's actions. This is about recognizing and protecting the sophisticated capabilities of our military working dogs, capabilities that sometimes exceed our human understanding." The prosecution, led by military advocate General Colonel Marcus Peters, maintained that protocol demanded certainty. "While the new evidence is compelling," he argued, "we cannot risk another incident. The safety of our personnel must be our primary concern." His words reflected the military's traditional approach to handling potentially dangerous assets. The hearing room in the Pentagon became a battleground of expert testimony. Dr. Reynolds presented her behavioral analysis, methodically dismantling the aggressive dog narrative. Her presentation included frame-by-frame analysis of Max's movements, showing how each action aligned with advanced threat response training. Sergeant Williams' testimony proved pivotal. Still bearing visible scars from the incident, he stood before the tribunal and declared, "I'm alive because Max disobeyed human commands to follow his training. If he had behaved any differently, we'd be holding a memorial instead of a hearing." His words carried the weight of both victim and witness. The technical evidence presented new challenges to the prosecution's case. Engineering experts demonstrated how Max's behavior had mapped out the explosive locations with uncanny accuracy. Each area he had prevented the team from entering was proven to contain sophisticated explosive devices that standard equipment had failed to detect. Sarah's testimony brought both professional insight and personal impact. She presented her analysis of Max's behavior patterns, supported by her veterinary studies and Dr. Reynolds' research. Her description of Max's gentle nature with her family, contrasted with his focused professionalism in the field, helped humanize him without diminishing his military value. Lieutenant Wright's credibility crumbled under cross-examination. When confronted with the complete evidence, including his own unedited body camera footage, he was forced to admit that his initial report had omitted crucial details about Max's warning behaviors. His reputation for by-the-book leadership suddenly seemed more like rigid inflexibility. Michael's testimony, delivered via video link from Walter Reed due to his condition, provided the emotional core of the defense. Despite his weakened state, his detailed recollection of Max's training and their years of service together demonstrated the depth of understanding between handler and dog that the military had previously overlooked. The battle extended beyond the hearing room. Every evening, Sarah and her mother worked with the legal team, reviewing transcripts and preparing for the next day's arguments. The strain showed on everyone's faces, but the stakes were too high to rest. Max's scheduled euthanasia date loomed over every discussion. Support continued to pour in from unexpected sources. A group of K-9 handlers from Allied forces submitted sworn statements about similar experiences with their dogs. Their testimony helped establish that Max's behavior, far from being unusual, represented the highest level of trained response to genuine threats. The prosecution's position began to shift subtly as the evidence mounted. Their arguments moved from demanding Max's euthanasia to suggesting alternative solutions: restricted service, retraining, or early retirement. It was the first sign that victory might be possible, though no one dared celebrate yet. The tribunal's deliberation stretched over 3 tense days. Outside the Pentagon, supporters maintained their vigil, their numbers growing as news spread of the upcoming decision. Sarah spent these days with her father, both of them drawing strength from the knowledge that they had done everything possible to save Max. The final decision came down to a fundamental question: could the military adapt its protocols to recognize that sometimes a dog's training and instincts might supersede human judgment in specific situations? The answer would not only determine Max's fate, but potentially reshape the future of military working dog programs. When the tribunal reconvened, the tension in the room was palpable. Colonel Patricia Hayes, the senior member, began reading the decision that would either condemn or vindicate Max, and with him the sacred bond between handlers and their K-9 partners. The morning the tribunal was set to announce its decision, Michael Bennett's condition took a dramatic turn for the worse. His body, already weakened by months of stress and ongoing recovery, finally began to surrender. Dr. Matthews found him unresponsive during morning rounds, his vital signs dangerously unstable. The intensive care unit at Walter Reed burst into frenzied activity. Alarms blared as Michael's blood pressure plummeted and his breathing became increasingly labored. Sarah, who had been preparing to attend the final tribunal session, rushed to the hospital instead, her carefully prepared notes forgotten in the back seat of her car. "He's crashing," Dr. Matthews announced, her voice tight with urgency. "The infection we've been fighting has reached his bloodstream." The medical team worked desperately to stabilize him, pumping him full of antibiotics and fighting to maintain his blood pressure. Sarah watched helplessly as her father, the strong soldier who had survived countless battles, fought his most critical one yet. Rebecca arrived within the hour, setting aside years of post-divorce distance to support her daughter. Together they maintained a silent vigil outside the ICU, jumping at every movement of the medical staff. The tribunal's proceedings seemed suddenly distant and insignificant compared to Michael's immediate survival. Doc Cooper, who had taken emergency leave to be there, provided translation for the medical jargon. "His body's been under too much stress for too long," he explained gently. "The wounds from the explosion never fully healed because he wouldn't rest properly. Now everything's catching up at once." Through the night, Michael's condition remained critical. The doctors spoke in hushed tones about septic shock and organ failure. Sarah refused to leave his side, holding his hand and talking to him about Max, promising him that their fight wasn't over. The monitors beeped steadily, marking each precious heartbeat. Word of Michael's condition reached the tribunal through Sarah's desperate phone call to Attorney Davidson. The timing seemed cruelly ironic. Just as they were closest to saving Max, they might lose the man who had fought so hard for him. The news cast a somber shadow over the proceedings. In his few moments of consciousness, Michael's thoughts remained fixed on Max. "Promise me," he whispered to Sarah during one lucid moment. "Promise me you'll keep fighting for him." His words were barely audible, but their impact hit Sarah like a physical blow. She finally understood that saving Max had become about something much larger than one dog's life. Dr. Matthews initiated aggressive treatment protocols but warned the family to prepare for the worst. "His body is exhausted," she explained. "He's been running on sheer willpower for months, and now that resource is depleted." The message was clear. Michael's dedication to saving Max might cost him his life. The hospital chapel filled with supporters, fellow soldiers, K-9 handlers, and community members who had joined their cause. They held a prayer vigil, asking for strength for both Michael and Max. The bond between handler and dog, which had seemed unique to their case, now symbolized something universal about loyalty and sacrifice. As dawn approached, Sarah made a desperate decision. She contacted Colonel Hawthorne, begging him to expedite the tribunal's decision. "My father needs to know Max's fate," she pleaded. "It might be the only thing that can give him the strength to keep fighting." The colonel, moved by the situation, promised to do what he could. Colonel Hawthorne's response to Sarah's plea set off an unprecedented acceleration of military judicial process. Conference calls were hastily arranged, and tribunal members were recalled from their morning activities. The gravity of Michael's condition added urgent human dimension to what had been a procedural matter. Attorney Davidson worked frantically to prepare an emergency petition. Her office became a command center of rapid-fire legal activity, with staff members running documents between the Pentagon and Walter Reed. Time, usually measured in weeks for military proceedings, was now counting down in hours. The tribunal members, moved by the circumstances, agreed to reconvene immediately. Colonel Hayes cleared her schedule, understanding that this decision could mean the difference between life and death for Michael Bennett. The usually formal proceedings took on an unusual intensity as everyone felt the pressure of Michael's deteriorating condition. Sarah coordinated between the hospital and the tribunal while maintaining her vigil at her father's bedside. Her phone became a lifeline, connecting the sterile hospital room to the chambers where Max's fate was being decided. Every update from Davidson was immediately whispered to Michael, even though he remained unconscious. Dr. Matthews monitored Michael's vital signs closely, noting slight improvements when positive news about the proceedings was shared. "Keep talking to him about Max," she encouraged Sarah. "His brain activity increases when he hears the dog's name." This medical observation added weight to the urgency of their mission. Lieutenant Wright, perhaps affected by news of Michael's condition, made an unexpected contribution. He submitted a revised statement acknowledging that his initial assessment of Max's behavior might have been overly rigid and failed to consider alternative explanations. This last-minute testimony helped clear one of the final obstacles to Max's exoneration. The K-9 training community mobilized their resources, providing immediate access to any documentation the tribunal requested. Records of similar cases were quickly assembled and submitted, strengthening the argument that Max's actions were consistent with the highest levels of training and instinct. Sarah's mother, Rebecca, setting aside her previous skepticism, used her administrative skills to help coordinate the flow of information between various parties. Her efficient management helped prevent any delays that might have slowed the process. "Michael needs to know Max is safe," she insisted, her voice firm with newfound conviction. Down in Afghanistan, Max's caretakers provided hourly updates on his condition. The dog, though physically healthy, had remained subdued since his separation from Michael. These reports added another layer of urgency to the proceedings. Two lives seemed to hang in the balance. The base chaplain, Father Morrison, joined the effort, not just offering prayers but using his influence with senior officers to emphasize the moral imperative of swift action. His presence reminded everyone involved that this was ultimately a story about loyalty and justice. Attorney Davidson made her final argument via video conference, her voice carrying the weight of both legal precedent and human compassion. "We have two soldiers here," she declared, "one human, one canine, both having served their country with absolute dedication. We owe them both our best efforts." The tribunal members retreated to their chambers for final deliberations, promising to return with a decision within the hour. Sarah held her father's hand, whispering updates about their progress. The monitors continued their steady beeping, marking the precious minutes as they waited for news that could change everything. In the tense hours before the tribunal's final decision, a series of crucial pieces of evidence emerged that would prove decisive in Max's case. First came the complete analysis of Max's body camera footage, enhanced by forensic audio experts who had worked through the night. The enhanced audio revealed distinct changes in Max's warning growls that perfectly matched the military's threat detection protocols. Dr. Sullivan rushed in with Max's latest medical evaluation conducted just hours earlier. The report showed no signs of aggression or mental instability, but rather displayed patterns consistent with a dog experiencing acute stress response to genuine threats. Her detailed notes documented how Max's behavior immediately normalized once removed from the threat environment. Sergeant Williams, despite his own ongoing recovery, made a surprise appearance at the tribunal. He brought with him his personal helmet camera footage, previously thought lost in the explosion. The recovered video clearly showed Max's attempts to communicate the danger, his actions deliberate and focused rather than aggressive or erratic. A breakthrough came when Chief Warrant Officer Thomas Parker, an explosives expert, presented his final analysis of the compound. His report confirmed that the explosive devices had been specifically designed to evade standard detection equipment. Only a highly trained dog could have detected these devices, Parker testified. Max's actions saved that entire unit. Staff Sergeant Martinez submitted her complete behavioral analysis, reconstructing Max's movements throughout the incident. Using advanced mapping software, she demonstrated how each of Max's supposedly aggressive actions had systematically moved the team away from the greatest concentrations of explosives. The pattern was too precise to be coincidental. Dr. Reynolds presented her comparative analysis of similar cases from military working dog units worldwide. Her research documented 15 instances where dogs had acted against handler commands to respond to threats that humans had failed to detect. In each case, the dog's judgment had proven correct. Lieutenant Wright's revised testimony proved particularly impactful. He provided a new written statement acknowledging that his initial report had been influenced by his own biases about proper military protocol. "I failed to consider that sometimes the dog's training and instincts might supersede human judgment," he admitted. The final piece of compelling evidence came from an unexpected source. A young private who had been monitoring security cameras in the area had preserved additional footage showing Max's behavior in the hours before the incident. The video showed the dog performing his regular duties perfectly normally until the exact moment they approached the rigged compound. Technical Sergeant Cooper presented medical data showing that none of the team's injuries matched typical dog attack patterns. His detailed analysis proved that the injuries had resulted from Max's attempts to physically move team members away from danger, not from any aggressive intent. Colonel Hawthorne himself delivered the last crucial testimony. His investigation had uncovered similar incidents at other bases where dogs had detected threats that equipment had missed. "We've been measuring these dogs against human standards," he stated, "when we should have been recognizing their unique capabilities." The culmination of evidence painted an incontrovertible picture. Max had not failed in his duty but had performed it at the highest level, even at the cost of his own reputation. Each piece of evidence reinforced the others, creating a comprehensive explanation for actions that had initially seemed inexplicable. Colonel Hayes stood before the assembled tribunal members, her expression solemn as she prepared to deliver the verdict. The room fell into absolute silence, the weight of 2 lives, 1 human, 1 canine hanging on her next words. "In the matter of military working dog Max, service number K435, this tribunal has reached a unanimous decision." Her voice carried clearly through the chamber as she continued, "Based on the overwhelming evidence presented, this tribunal finds that MWD Max acted in complete accordance with his training and in service of his primary mission, protecting American lives. All charges of aggressive behavior and instability are hereby dismissed." The decision carried several immediate directives. First, Max was to be immediately released from restricted custody. Second, his service record would be amended to reflect his actions as exemplary rather than problematic. Third, and most importantly, approval was granted for an immediate reunion with Master Sergeant Bennett, pending medical clearance. Sarah, receiving the news via phone at Walter Reed, broke down in tears. Dr. Matthews, monitoring Michael's vital signs, noticed an immediate improvement when Sarah shared the news with her unconscious father. "His body is responding," she said, hope evident in her voice. "Keep talking to him about Max." The logistics of the reunion required careful coordination. Given Michael's critical condition, Max would need to be transported from Afghanistan immediately. Colonel Richardson personally authorized a priority military transport, an unprecedented action for a working dog. "Some rules are worth breaking," he noted, signing the authorization. Dr. Sullivan prepared Max for the journey, ensuring he was healthy enough for the long flight. She noted that the dog's demeanor had already improved upon hearing Michael's name during preparation. The base veterinary team worked through the night, completing all necessary paperwork and medical checks to prevent any delays. At Walter Reed, preparations began for Max's arrival. Despite strict regulations about animals in the ICU, Dr. Matthews authorized a special exception. The medical benefits of this reunion could outweigh any technical violations of protocol. She argued, backed by research on the therapeutic effects of handler dog reunions. Sarah and Rebecca worked with hospital staff to arrange a suitable space. They converted a private room adjacent to the ICU, making it accessible for both Michael's medical equipment and Max's needs. Every detail was considered, from non-slip mats for Max's paws to ensuring clear paths for emergency medical access. The news of the reunion approval spread quickly through the military community. Veterans groups organized a motorcycle escort from the airfield to the hospital. K-9 handlers from local police departments offered their support, creating a chain of responsibility for Max's care during any moments he couldn't be with Michael. Attorney Davidson ensured all legal paperwork was bulletproof. She drafted documents for Michael's continued guardianship of Max upon his recovery and arranged for Sarah to have temporary custody during her father's convalescence. This time, she promised, no one will separate them again. The tribunal's final report included a recommendation for reviewing and updating military protocols regarding working dog behavior assessment. Max's case would become a teaching example, ensuring future handlers and commanders would better understand and trust their K-9 partners' instincts. As the sun set over Walter Reed that evening, Sarah sat by her father's bedside, holding his hand and sharing every detail of the approval. Though still unconscious, monitors showed his heart rate strengthening. In less than 24 hours, Max would be there. A reunion that seemed impossible just days ago was now becoming reality. The night before Max's scheduled arrival, Michael's condition deteriorated rapidly. His fever spiked to dangerous levels, and the infection that had been lurking in his system launched a full assault on his weakened body. The ICU at Walter Reed became a battlefield of a different kind as medical staff fought to keep him alive. Dr. Matthews ordered an aggressive new round of antibiotics, but Michael's body showed little response to the treatment. His blood pressure dropped dangerously low, and his oxygen levels continued to decline despite the ventilator's support. The doctor's face grew increasingly grave as each intervention failed to produce the desired results. Sarah refused to leave her father's side, holding his hand through the long hours of the night. She kept talking about Max, describing the preparations for his arrival, believing somehow her father could hear her through the fog of illness. The monitors beeped steadily, each sound a reminder of how precarious his condition had become. Rebecca paced the hospital corridor, making frantic calls to expedite Max's transport. "He's not going to die before seeing that dog," she declared to anyone who would listen, her voice breaking with emotion. The military transport carrying Max was still hours away, and time seemed to be slipping through their fingers. The medical team worked in shifts, constantly adjusting medications and monitoring vital signs. Dr. Matthews stayed well past her shift, unwilling to leave at this critical juncture. "We just need to keep him stable for a few more hours," she kept saying, though her tone carried less conviction with each passing hour. Around midnight, Michael's heart rate became erratic. The ICU erupted into controlled chaos as staff rushed to stabilize him. Sarah was ushered into the hallway, where she collapsed into her mother's arms. Through the window, she could see the medical team working frantically over her father's still form. Doc Cooper, who had been monitoring Michael's condition, shared a grim assessment with the family. "His body is giving out," he explained gently. "The combination of his injuries, the infection, and the stress of these past months. It's all catching up at once." As dawn approached, the situation became critical. Michael's organs were showing signs of failure, and his breathing had become increasingly labored despite maximum ventilator support. The medical team began discussing the possibility of emergency surgery, though Dr. Matthews worried he wasn't strong enough to survive the procedure. Sarah clutched her father's military photo in one hand and her phone in the other, waiting for updates on Max's transport. The dog was still 3 hours out, and every minute felt like an eternity. "Please, Dad," she whispered, "just hold on a little longer. Max is coming. He's finally coming home." Sarah Bennett's world had shrunk to the dimensions of a hospital room, where the rhythmic beeping of machines marked time's cruel passage. Her college textbooks lay forgotten in her apartment, her veterinary studies suspended indefinitely. The bright future she had planned now seemed distant and unimportant compared to the immediate crisis before her. The physical toll of weeks spent in hospital chairs showed in her hunched shoulders and dark-circled eyes. She barely recognized herself in the bathroom mirror. The confident young woman who had once questioned her father's judgment was replaced by someone haunted and desperate. Each time the doctors entered with grim expressions, another piece of her hope crumbled. Guilt gnawed at her constantly. "I should have believed him sooner," she whispered to her mother during one particularly dark night. "I wasted so much time doubting him." Rebecca held her daughter as she sobbed, unable to offer any comfort except her presence. The weight of those early weeks of skepticism now felt crushing. The few hours of sleep she managed were plagued by nightmares, dreams where she reached for Max but couldn't quite grasp him, where her father called out but she couldn't find him. She would wake with a start, immediately checking the monitors, terrified that she had missed some crucial change in her father's condition. Her phone buzzed constantly with updates about Max's transport, each message simultaneously bringing hope and fear. Hope that Max would arrive in time, fear that her father wouldn't last until then. She found herself bargaining with God, with fate, with anyone who might listen. Just let him have this one reunion, this one moment of justice. The hospital staff watched with growing concern as she pushed herself beyond exhaustion. Nurses would bring her extra blankets and coffee, trying to convince her to rest, but she refused to leave her post. "I wasn't there for them before," she would say, "but I'm here now." Even her mother's attempts to get her to eat met with limited success. Food tasted like ash in her mouth, and every minute spent away from her father's bedside felt like a betrayal. The strong coffee that kept her awake left her hands shaking and her thoughts scattered, but she couldn't risk sleeping through any change in his condition. In quiet moments, Sarah would talk to her unconscious father, sharing memories of happier times, weekend visits where Max would join their hikes, family dinners where the dog sat patiently under the table. Each story felt like a lifeline thrown into the darkness, hoping her father would grab hold and find his way back. The hardest part was maintaining a brave face when speaking to the medical team. She had to be strong, had to be clear-headed enough to make decisions if necessary. But alone in the hospital chapel at night, she would finally let her guard down, allowing herself to feel the full weight of her fear and exhaustion. The military transport carrying Max encountered its own set of crises during the long flight from Afghanistan. Despite Dr. Sullivan's careful preparation, Max's physical and emotional state began to deteriorate rapidly. The once proud military working dog lay listless in his transport kennel, barely responding to handlers' attempts to comfort him. Staff Sergeant Martinez, who had volunteered to accompany Max, noticed his increasing distress as the flight progressed. The dog refused water and showed no interest in food, behaviors eerily similar to those he'd exhibited during his initial separation from Michael. His normally alert ears remained flat against his head, and his eyes had taken on a dull, distant look. The flight medic, though trained primarily for human patients, worked with Martinez to monitor Max's vital signs. His heart rate was elevated, and his breathing had become shallow and rapid. They debated diverting to a closer military base with veterinary facilities, but the urgency of reaching Michael in time pushed them to continue. During a refueling stop, Max briefly rallied, lifting his head at the mention of Michael's name. Martinez used this moment to coax him into drinking some water, but the improvement was short-lived. Within hours, he had retreated back into his withdrawn state, responding only to direct physical contact. The transport team maintained constant communication with Walter Reed, updating them on Max's condition while receiving increasingly worrying reports about Michael. The parallel decline of both handler and dog seemed to defy medical explanation, yet perfectly illustrated the depth of their bond. Dr. Sullivan's voice crackled over the radio, providing guidance for emergency interventions if needed. "Keep talking to him about Michael," she advised. "Their connection might be the only thing strong enough to keep them both going." The crew took turns sitting with Max, sharing stories about Michael and their upcoming reunion. The high-altitude flight presented additional challenges. The pressurized cabin affected Max differently than human passengers, and his previous injuries from the explosion made him more sensitive to the changes. The flight medic administered mild sedation, hoping to ease his discomfort without further compromising his condition. As they entered American airspace, Max's behavior became more erratic. He alternated between periods of complete withdrawal and sudden alertness, as if sensing his proximity to Michael. Martinez noticed him pressing his nose against the kennel door during these alert moments, his nostrils flaring as if trying to catch a familiar scent across impossible distances. The final hour of the flight proved the most critical. Max's temperature began to rise and his breathing became more labored. The transport team prepared for an emergency landing, but Martinez convinced them to press on. "He's held on this long," she argued. "Don't take away his chance to say goodbye." Dawn broke over Walter Reed Medical Center with a cruel sense of timing. Just as Max's transport was making its final approach to Andrews Air Force Base, Michael's condition reached a critical point. His vital signs plummeted, and the medical team rushed into emergency protocols, their urgent voices filling the ICU with controlled panic. Dr. Matthews delivered the devastating news to Sarah and Rebecca in the hallway. "His organs are failing," she explained gently. "We're doing everything we can, but you should prepare yourselves." The words hung in the air like a physical weight, crushing the last remnants of their hope. Simultaneously, Martinez radioed from the transport that Max had become unresponsive. The proud Belgian Malinois lay motionless in his kennel, his breathing shallow and irregular. The veterinary team waiting at Andrews prepared for the worst, their equipment ready for emergency intervention. Sarah stood at the window of her father's room, torn between two crises. The military escort was ready to rush Max to the hospital, but it seemed increasingly likely that neither patient would survive long enough for the reunion. The victory they had fought so hard to achieve was slipping away at the final moment. Rebecca made desperate calls to expedite Max's transport through D.C. traffic, but even with police escort, the journey would take precious minutes they might not have. The morning traffic reports warned of delays on every route, as if the city itself was conspiring against them. In the ICU, Michael's heart monitor began sounding alarms. The medical team worked frantically to stabilize him, but nothing seemed to help. Dr. Matthews ordered another round of emergency medications, knowing they were running out of options. The clock on the wall ticked mercilessly forward, counting down moments that felt increasingly final. The hospital chaplain arrived quietly, taking his place in the corner of the room. His presence, though meant to provide comfort, felt to Sarah like an admission of defeat. She watched as he began his quiet prayers, each whispered word another acknowledgement that hope was fading. Outside the hospital, the morning sun cast long shadows across the gathering crowd of supporters, veterans, handlers, and community members who had followed their story. They stood in silent vigil, their own dogs sitting quietly beside them, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. Staff Sergeant Martinez's voice broke through on Sarah's phone, her words bringing no comfort. "We're losing him, Sarah. Max is slipping away. It's like he knows." The connection crackled and died, leaving Sarah standing between her father's room and the hospital entrance, paralyzed by the impossible choice of which goodbye to witness. Dr. Matthews appeared at Sarah's side, her face grave. "You need to decide now," she said softly. "We can keep him on life support, hoping Max arrives in time, or we can let him go peacefully." The choice felt impossible, forcing her father to endure more suffering or denying him his final wish to see Max one last time. In the midst of this crisis, Dr. Sullivan's final toxicology report arrived from Afghanistan with devastating clarity. The analysis of residue samples from the compound revealed traces of a highly sophisticated chemical compound, one specifically designed to be undetectable by standard military equipment, but with a distinct odor signature that trained dogs could detect. The lab results explained everything. Max's behavior hadn't been aggression or instability, it had been a desperate attempt to save his team from an invisible killer. The compound, while non-lethal in its initial state, would have become deadly if the planned explosion had dispersed it through the air. Max's extraordinary sense of smell had detected this threat long before any human or machine could. Dr. Matthews, reviewing the report in Michael's room, suddenly made the connection to his current symptoms: the prolonged low-level exposure during the incident. She explained to Sarah, "That's what's been causing his body to deteriorate. We've been treating the symptoms without understanding the underlying cause." The discovery prompted an immediate change in Michael's treatment protocol. The medical team quickly adjusted his medications, targeting the specific type of chemical exposure rather than just fighting the infection.
Within hours, his vital signs began to show subtle improvements.
Staff Sergeant Martinez, upon receiving this information during Max's transport, realized the dog might be suffering from similar exposure effects. The veterinary team quickly administered appropriate treatment, and Max's condition also began to stabilize. His alertness improved, and his vital signs strengthened as the proper medications took effect. The report was rushed to the Pentagon, where it caused immediate upheaval. The discovery of such a sophisticated threat had serious implications for military security protocols. More importantly, it provided irrefutable proof that Max's actions had not only been justified but had saved his entire team from a fate far worse than the injuries they had sustained. As the toxicology report circulated through military channels, an alarming pattern of deliberate suppression emerged. Internal memos revealed that Lieutenant Colonel James Harris, head of base security, had actively downplayed initial reports of chemical traces found at the explosion site, fearing the political fallout of such a security breach. Evidence surfaced showing that Harris had personally ordered the redaction of key sections from the original incident reports. Emails between his office and the investigative team demonstrated a calculated effort to frame the incident as a simple case of canine aggression rather than acknowledge the sophisticated threat that had been missed by their security protocols. The paper trail led to even more disturbing discoveries. Several junior officers had attempted to report their concerns about similar chemical signatures detected in the region, but their reports had been systematically buried. Harris and his team had created a narrative that protected the base's reputation at the expense of truth and justice. Dr. Sullivan's original medical observations of Max had been altered before reaching the review board. Her notes about the dog's specific stress responses, which perfectly matched reactions to chemical exposure, had been removed from the official record. The deliberate manipulation of evidence had nearly cost both Michael and Max their lives. When confronted with the mounting evidence, Harris attempted to justify his actions as necessary for base security and morale. However, his carefully constructed cover-up crumbled as more witnesses came forward. Base technicians admitted to being pressured to modify equipment readings, and security footage from the days following the incident had been selectively edited. The most damning evidence came from Harris's own administrative assistant, who had maintained a private record of all document alterations. Her detailed log revealed a systematic effort to discredit Max and Michael, preventing any deeper investigation that might expose the base's vulnerability to chemical threats. The Pentagon's response to the exposed cover-up was swift and decisive. Lieutenant Colonel Harris was immediately relieved of duty pending a full investigation, and a comprehensive review of all K-9 unit incident reports from the past year was ordered. The military's highest levels of command publicly acknowledged Max's actions as heroic, issuing a formal commendation for his extraordinary service. Michael's military record was not only cleared but enhanced with special recognition. His unwavering faith in his K-9 partner, once dismissed as emotional attachment, was now highlighted as exemplary handler judgment. The official narrative shifted dramatically, presenting their story as a testament to the sophisticated capabilities of military working dogs. Every officer involved in suppressing the evidence faced serious consequences. Lieutenant Wright, who had led the charge against Max, was suspended pending review. The base's entire security protocol underwent a complete overhaul, with new emphasis on integrating K9 intelligence into threat assessments. Dr. Sullivan received formal recognition for her persistent investigation and unwavering professional integrity. Her detailed medical observations, originally dismissed and altered, became the foundation for new guidelines in evaluating K9 behavior under extreme circumstances. The military established a special review board for K9 incidents, ensuring that handler insights would never again be so easily dismissed. The vindication extended beyond individual cases. The military instituted new policies requiring that any K9 behavioral incidents undergo thorough chemical and environmental testing before conclusions are drawn. Handler expertise was given new weight in evaluation protocols, and the bond between handler and dog was formally recognized as a crucial component of effective service. Sarah's role in uncovering the truth was also acknowledged. Her combination of personal advocacy and professional insight helped bridge the gap between military protocol and K9 behavior science. The case became a teaching example in military veterinary programs, demonstrating the importance of considering all possible factors in K9 behavior assessment. The identification of the specific chemical compound revolutionized treatment approaches for both Michael and Max. Dr. Matthews collaborated with toxicology specialists to develop a targeted treatment protocol that directly addressed the compound's unique effects on the body. Within days of starting the new treatment, Michael's vital signs showed marked improvement. The veterinary team treating Max applied similar principles, adapting the human protocol for canine physiology. The results were remarkable. Max's lethargy disappeared, his appetite returned, and his characteristic alertness began to resurface. Dr. Sullivan documented every aspect of his recovery, creating a valuable resource for treating future K9 exposure cases. This medical breakthrough extended beyond just Michael and Max. Other members of the unit who had shown unexplained symptoms since the incident were quickly screened and treated. Several handlers reported that their dogs, who had been operating in the same region, showed immediate improvement under the new treatment protocols. The Walter Reed medical team discovered that traditional treatments had been ineffective because they targeted only the surface symptoms. The new protocol, addressing the root cause of the chemical exposure, proved far more successful. Michael's fever broke for the first time in weeks, and his organ function began to stabilize. Most significantly, the medical teams observed that the handler-dog pairs recovered more quickly when reunited. The strong emotional bond between handlers and their K9 partners seemed to accelerate the healing process for both. This observation led to new military medical policies encouraging handler-dog proximity during treatment for exposure-related conditions. The breakthrough caught the attention of medical researchers studying the effects of chemical exposure on military personnel. The case became a cornerstone study in developing new treatment approaches, with Michael and Max's recovery helping to establish protocols that would protect future service members and their K9 partners. The moment Max entered Walter Reed Medical Center, everyone present knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. Despite his own exhaustion, the Belgian Malinois's ears perked up for the first time in weeks, his nose working the air as if seeking a scent he'd carried in his memory for months. Staff Sergeant Martinez guided Max through the hospital corridors, his nails clicking softly on the polished floor. As they approached the ICU, Max's pace quickened, pulling gently against his leash. He seemed to know exactly where he was going, following an invisible trail that led straight to Michael's room. At the ICU entrance, Dr. Matthews waited with Sarah and Rebecca. The doctor had insisted on monitoring both patients during the reunion, but her clinical detachment softened at the sight of Max's focused determination. The dog paused briefly at the threshold, as if gathering strength for the moment he'd been waiting for. When the door opened, time seemed to stand still. Max's eyes locked onto Michael's still form in the hospital bed. For a heartbeat, he didn't move, taking in the sight of his handler surrounded by medical equipment. Then, with gentle grace that brought tears to every eye in the room, he padded softly to Michael's bedside. Max pressed his nose gently against Michael's hand, letting out a soft whine that seemed to carry all the worry and longing of their months apart. Despite his unconscious state, Michael's fingers twitched slightly at the contact. The monitor showed an immediate change. His heart rate strengthened, his blood pressure stabilized. The Belgian Malinois carefully settled himself beside the bed, resting his head near Michael's hand, his eyes never leaving his handler's face. He didn't need to be told to stay. Everyone present understood that wild horses couldn't have dragged him from that spot. The partnership that had saved so many lives was finally reunited. 6 months after the reunion at Walter Reed, the Bennett family farm in Massachusetts transformed into a sanctuary of healing and hope. The sprawling 20-acre property, inherited from Michael's father, became a testament to the enduring bond between handlers and their canine partners. The old barn was converted into a state-of-the-art rehabilitation center for retired military working dogs. Michael, though still walking with a slight limp, spent his days working with Max to help other dogs transition to civilian life. The pair's remarkable story attracted handlers from across the country seeking guidance and hope for their own canine partners. Sarah put her veterinary studies to practical use, establishing a clinic specializing in former military working dogs. Her experiences with Max had given her unique insights into the physical and emotional needs of these extraordinary animals. She worked alongside her father, combining his practical experience with her medical knowledge. The farm's peaceful atmosphere proved therapeutic for both humans and dogs. Max, now officially retired, took on the role of mentor to younger dogs. He would often be seen leading groups of canines through training exercises, his own experience helping others overcome their service-related trauma. Rebecca, who had initially been skeptical of the farm's mission, became an essential part of the operation. Her administrative skills helped turn the rehabilitation center into a model program, one that military bases across the country sought to replicate. She and Michael found a new kind of partnership in their shared mission. Weekends at the farm became gathering points for the military canine community. Handlers and their dogs would come together to share stories, support each other, and celebrate the special bond they shared. The sight of Max and Michael leading these gatherings, both bearing the scars of their ordeal but standing proud and strong, inspired everyone who witnessed it. The story of Michael Bennett and Max reshaped military canine programs across the nation. Their case became required reading at the Military Working Dog Training School at Lackland Air Force Base, teaching new handlers about the profound importance of trusting their canine partner's instincts. The Pentagon established the Bennett-Max Protocol, a new set of guidelines for evaluating canine behavior in combat situations. The protocol emphasized the importance of considering the full context of a dog's actions before making judgments about their behavior. Handler insights were given equal weight to technical evaluations, marking a significant shift in military policy. Sarah's veterinary research, based on her experiences with Max, led to groundbreaking studies on the bond between handlers and military working dogs. Her findings on how this connection affects both physical and psychological recovery became standard reference material in military veterinary programs. The Bennett Farm Rehabilitation Center grew into a national model for canine retirement programs. Military bases across the country sent representatives to study their methods, leading to similar centers being established nationwide. The sight of Michael and Max working together became a powerful symbol of healing and hope for the entire canine community. Every year, on the anniversary of their reunion, the farm hosts the Max Memorial Canine Conference, bringing together handlers, veterinarians, and military officials to discuss advances in canine training and care. The event always opens with a demonstration by Max, now gray around the muzzle but still carrying himself with the dignity that had saved his team years ago. Perhaps the most meaningful legacy was the change in how the military viewed the handler-dog bond. What had once been seen as a potential liability was now recognized as a crucial element of successful canine operations. Michael and Max's story proved that sometimes the strongest weapon in a soldier's arsenal isn't high-tech equipment or sophisticated weapons, but the unshakable trust between a handler and their dog. Their story continues to inspire new generations of handlers and their canine partners, a testament to the extraordinary capabilities of military working dogs and the handlers who trust them with their lives. Thank you for joining us for this powerful story of loyalty, trust, and unwavering friendship. If you were moved by Michael and Max's incredible journey, please take a moment to show your support by hitting that subscribe button and becoming part of our storytelling community. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if it touched your heart. And please share it with your friends and family, because stories like these remind us of the extraordinary bonds we share with our four-legged companions. What did you think about Michael and Max's journey? Share your thoughts and emotions in the comments below. Are you a veteran K9 handler, or do you have your own special story about the bond with your dog? We'd love to hear from you. Together, let's spread this message of hope, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond between humans and their faithful companions.